Well, thanks everyone for joining us. This is a very cool panel, or a fireside chat, I guess is what we've called it. And I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you.
Talking with you. The last time I saw you was in San Francisco when you had, I don't know what year it was, maybe 2019. So it's been a while.
Yes.
Been a quick minute. You had a company, Evernow, doing menopause, women's health, longevity. There was a longevity play in it.
Yes.
Which I thought was super cool. And you had left DARPA. And now you're back here.
I'm back.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you've just done so many different things. I know you've founded a couple of different companies. You've worked at DARPA, ARPA-H now as head. How does forming the companies and being part of all those different elements inform what you're doing now?
Yeah. It's funny because as I was doing all these different things, they all felt a little disparate, right? How do these all tie together? And the amazing thing is now being at ARPA-H, it feels like every single one of those experiences perfectly prepared me to actually lead ARPA-H. So at DARPA, I obviously learned the ARPA model. I learned the power of it. I got the opportunity to build programs and programs that really took technology literally out of a lab and into the field in 5 years. And being able to be part of that and understand how that process works and how you actually leverage taxpayer dollars to pull things that feel very futuristic or very early all the way through a capability was really just tremendous. And at the end of that tenure, after working with so many incredible startup founders and early companies and showing that they can really build a new future that's possible, I decided I wanted to do it myself. And so, of course, I'd go into the hardest space of building companies in healthcare, which you're doing the Lord's work if you're doing that, because I can't imagine a harder space. But, how I ended up starting Evernow was I was doing a lot of research into health and longevity. And I'll never forget the paper that I read that women who go through menopause later live longer. And I was just stunned when I read this because I'm living in Silicon Valley. Everyone's talking about longevity. Tons of companies are being formed and funded. And I thought, this seems really, really important for women's longevity. And I've never heard anyone mention it. And you dive into the literature and you also learn that women who go through early menopause, especially due to medical conditions, have much shorter lives, many more health conditions. And all I could think was, why isn't anyone doing anything? And if I have any role to play here, I would speak to tons of women and they would say, oh my God, my doctor won't even prescribe me hormone therapy. It's going to give me cancer. And I looked into the literature. Well, that's not really true. And so I said, if I have to do anything, like we have to just start a company to get women just the basics in order to extend their life. And it was funny in forming that company, working with so many physicians, they were so hesitant to even say that this might extend lifespan. They were even so hesitant to talk about the fact that you do have lower cardiovascular rates, lower osteoporosis, et cetera. And so I said, look, if there's anything I can do, it's to form a company just to make sure women have access to this life-saving and life-extending therapy that everyone should have. Really fun that I show up. And literally in the first 2 weeks I show up, I get pulled into the group that ends up changing the labels on hormone therapy for women.
Oh, so that's so cool.
Yeah, so that was actually in line with the science, which is stunning. But the other thing I learned, building a company, it's so fulfilling to be able to touch people. But I also felt the limits of running a company that needed to be profitable and having the business model that we had, which was there's so much more science and research and technologies that we need to develop in this space. There's so much we don't know. And so you begin to feel those walls really strongly. And so about 5 years into the company, we're achieving our mission, ensuring women are getting care. And I got a call from the White House and they said, would you be interested in leading ARPA-H? The agency was only about 3 years old at the time. And I just said yes. Like, I can't imagine anything better to do than to bring all of my experience working at DARPA, understanding that model, being in the private sector, building companies, understanding the challenges, especially of a small company, trying to do something new. And then even, gosh, how are you even going to interact with the federal government when you have barely any time? And so it just felt like part of my life's mission to come to ARPA-H and build an incredible model that can really do that at a larger scale, being able to really drive health breakthroughs from the lab, from the early stage. It's just the small companies and figure out how do we actually build this to scale and build this in a way that can impact people's lives, not in decades, which is how most things in healthcare work, but really in years. How do we do that? How can we do that?
This is why I'm such a big fan. I love this. I mean, if you weren't here for the panel earlier, I I was a fan person of the ARPA-H program managers there too. I love that everything is, you're trying to do everything quickly and get real results and things that will help people now, right? With sort of a business type mindset, but in the government, which is just like so cool. So I love this. You've talked about wanting to make the impossible not just possible, but probable. I like that. That is like such a good line. Can you point to a program right now where you think the rest of the field would say, oh, it's impossible, but you don't?
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely. I have two great examples. One is Thea. So we have a program manager, Cal Roberts, who came in, very distinguished career as an academic, leading companies, CMO of Bausch and Lomb, and he decided like this is going to be the pinnacle of his career, right? Which because he understands just what you can do here, and he came in and he actually told me, what he truly wants to do. I said, yeah, Cal, I know your program. So what do you want to do? He's like, at some point I want to be able to show that you could transplant a human brain, and I was just like, oh my God. But that's actually the mark of a great program manager, because they have this wild vision that technically there's no reason it can't be true. But his first example, he's like, okay, but if we're going to be able to do that, we have to do some other things first. And so his first idea was, let's actually show we can transplant a human eye, which does sound pretty impossible. You not only have to keep that eye alive outside the body after it's removed, but number two, you have to regrow the optic nerve and reconnect it back to the brain.
And all the tiny little blood vessels,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And, Cal has had two major breaks. Everyone said like, this is not feasible. Like, this is too hard. Not only has he now been able to show, his teams that he's funded have been able to show they can keep the eye alive outside of the body for 24 hours, which is a total breakthrough. Number two, he's actually shown now in animal models that he can regrow that optic nerve and restore sight. In animal models, I want to be super clear about that. But that's tremendous. Even to have that possibility, even to show that's possible is great. I would say a second one, which we just announced the funding of, is the FRONT program. This is John Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was here
We had
earlier.
him on the panel earlier. Yeah.
This idea of, look, one of the parts of the human body that does not regenerate, that cannot really heal, is the brain, whether that's due to traumatic brain injury or neurodegeneration. The idea that how could we have the brain not just heal itself, but the idea that we could take iPSCs, differentiate those, grow neocortical tissue, not just structurally but functionally correct, implant that into the damaged areas of the brain and have it reintegrate and have it restore function. It's just phenomenal. And again, there's no technical reason this can't be true. It's just hard. It's just nobody decided to come together and do this. And I think this is one of the powers of the agency and what sets it apart. NIH and many other folks do investigator initiatives. Great, you can do what an investigator in their single lab can do. But a project like this, a project that is this bold, you need so many people working on it, so many teams coming together, that this is their sole focus across academia, across industry. And I think this is a perfect example of something that's the sum is larger than, the whole is larger than the sum of the parts here. And so I think that just sounds wild, but there's no reason it can't happen. And that's the magic of this organization, is figuring out how do you actually craft these programs, set the milestones, bring people together to make this happen.
Yeah. Wow. It's incredible. And that kind of leads into the next question then, is this idea that you want breakthroughs in years, not in decades, right? And so how do you know if, because a lot of these things are so hard to do.
Yes.
How do you know in the early stages? I know you have your milestones and things, but how do you know if it's going to work? Or you just need to press the kill switch, right?
Exactly. And we do. We do. I did it at DARPA, and we do it here as well. If something's not bearing fruit, you've got to cut it and often just revector. But one of the ways that we do this is really all the way up front. When a program manager is kind of crafting their program, they have to come up to the Star Chamber of Tech Council, which is the leadership of ARPA-H, right? And that's where you put forward your idea, the structure of your program, how it's going to run, the amount of money you need, and you have to try to get through the gauntlet. And one of the first questions we ask is, what are the hardest parts of this? What are the things that if aren't true, this program's going to fail? And then we say, put those right up front. To the extent possible, put the hardest things up front. So that way we can try to understand, is this really going to be feasible or not? So we try to go after the hardest things immediately, if at all possible, so we can prove or disprove our thesis. And so we try to kill our babies young if you can, essentially.
Right? Fail fast.
Fail
If you're going to
fast.
fail
And-
fast.
And we try to celebrate the people who've done that. We really
Uh-huh.
do, because you're not limited by shots on goal in an organization like ours. The biggest way to lose a trust or to fail is to keep funding something that's not working, right? To try keep going down a path that's not bearing out, and not have the intellectual rigor and honesty to say, this isn't the right path. Maybe we need to rethink this. Maybe we need to rethink the program. That's really tough to do. That's so hard, especially for a program manager who's invested so much of themselves in it. But it's that rigor that enables us to move quickly. If you can kill off paths, sometimes we'll run a thing just to see if something's yes or no, because nobody's had the guts to run an experiment. We'll say, well, let's just run it. Let's see if it's true or false. We might as well cut off a path that's not going to be productive, or no, we should be going down this other path as fast as possible.
Right? A different kind of A/B testing. Wow. So that brings up a question I was going to ask you later, but I'm going to ask you now because I think it flows in really well. About how do you talk about failure then? I mean,
Yeah.
And you were in Silicon Valley. I mean,
Yes.
we celebrate failure in Silicon Valley.
Yes.
But yeah, I think in the government space, it's kind of a different thing. You don't want to be admitting a lot of, I would think you wouldn't want to be admitting a lot of failure. So how do you walk that line?
Yeah. Obviously, we run a portfolio of things. So we always bring it back to the portfolio layer. One program should not make or break the agency.
Yeah.
And actually, the amount of trust it's built within the agency, with Congress, to be really honest with them, I don't think they're used to folks necessarily in my position being honest with them. A lot of people in government often are always protecting their budgets.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if we don't spend it all, we might get it taken away. We've been very clear. We're not going to spend it unless we have something incredible to spend it on, because it's taxpayer dollars. This came out of somebody's pocket, and they're entrusting us to spend it better than they could have. So that's like a message I'm always using. And then we stick by it. And how you build on that is you say, yeah, we killed that, but now we have this new thing. Right. Yep. That didn't work out. Here's what we're doing about it. Or here's a new thing. So you also show you don't get stuck in the failure.
Right.
You're always learning from it and moving on. And
Yeah.
I think transparency has really gotten us a lot of fans, that we're willing to take the big bets others aren't, and we're willing to deal with failure and shut something down. Actually, no one's ever been upset that something has failed,
Right.
which is kind of amazing.
Wow. That's great. Well, failure is a lesson. Right? I mean, this is what we tell people in sports. We tell them in school. I mean,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yes.
Wow. And this might be going into the weeds a bit, but what happens with the program managers then? Do they come up with new ideas?
Yes. Multiple things. Sometimes it's just part of the program. And then they go back to the folks doing the work. We call them the performers, the academic team, the industry team, the startup team. And we say, what do you want to do here? Do you have a better idea? Do you have a way around this? Or is this a dead end? So it's not like one day we show up and you're like, you're dead to us forever.
Yeah.
We funded you. We actually want you to be successful. And so sometimes it works at that level. Sometimes it's like, nope, this arm is gone. Now let's figure out, is the program still viable? We want to double down on another path. Do we need to find somebody else to do something else? So we have so many tools and flexibility at our disposal, because the goal is to make the program come true.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. It's lean, quick, efficient. It's great. Well, let's talk about agency leadership now. So, because you've overseen a transition, right?
Yes.
How is ARPA-H today different from how it was when it started in 2022?
Yeah, it's like every startup. The early days are complete chaos. And I think that was especially true within a federal government context, because they had money before they even had a program manager. Imagining standing up an agency, being obligated funds, being told to spend them, and you actually don't have the ability to spend them.
Yeah.
So that was very stressful. So
Yeah.
they're both trying to hire PMs. They're trying to get money out the door. They're trying to fund good things. And so I know it was very stressful. Often what the agency did, and this is a narrative we're definitely in the middle of shifting towards, what they did at the very beginning, because they understood they had this challenge, was they had a clock ticking so fast. The clock had already been ticking before they got there, essentially. So you're already halfway through the game and somebody's like, okay, where are you? So a lot of what the program managers did at that point was we did do more kind of big awards from people who had sent their projects in. So how often DARPA works is you have a program manager who conceives of a program, puts out a call, and people apply for it. In this case, it was send us your great ideas, form teams, or send us your individual ideas and send them in. And so the most sophisticated PMs who were there, people we'd attracted from DARPA, were very smart. They kind of cobbled programs together by going out and meeting performers and kind of bringing them in that way. We really shifted away from that because of what I said before, that in a program you can have a situation where the sum is greater than the parts. And so in that case, we really tried to shift away from, hey, brilliant researcher or brilliant company, you told us you have an idea for $30 million. That's nice. What we want to do, though, is hear your best ideas and then talk about a program we could build where we can build a sandbox for a lot of people to come actually see what we can do above and beyond that. So that's a big shift that we've made in the organization. Believe it or not, the other shift that we've made, we've actually scaled down the organization. That might be shocking. Not the number of program managers, but a lot of internal staff. One of the things that was brilliant about DARPA is when I was there, we had about 100 PMs and about 100 careers. Okay, so think about that. I show up at DARPA, we have about 35 PMs and 120 careers.
Yeah.
Partially because it was staffed with people from other parts of the government before DARPA people got there. And so one thing we've done is we've actually leaned out the organization. And in doing so, we've been able to move faster. So our overhead rates have actually come down, which is great.
That's great.
As anyone who's ever run a startup knows, the more people you have, it doesn't scale linearly, it scales exponentially, the number of complications you have. And so we've really leaned it out and flattened out the org. I think at one point my head of IT was literally reporting to 5 people before they got to me. Now he reports directly up to the director's office. And so that's where the startup experience came in, which was, more people does not mean things move faster or things get easier, often quite the opposite.
Yeah, I guess more complicated for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I agree with that,
Yeah.
100%. That kind of leads into the next question, actually. So earlier we had this panel where we had 3 of your program managers up here.
Yeah.
And there was this sort of the question, and I'm not sure it actually got answered. So I'm going to ask you, is there, so we had the longevity people up here. We had Jean-Pierre Bear with the brain and Andrew Brack with Prosper and Gloria, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on her last name right now. Elliott. Gloria Elliott on the distribution stuff.
Yeah.
And those all work together as sort of a unifying longevity theme.
Yes.
Is that by design? Or did it kind of just happen that you're doing longevity stuff and it all came together? Wow, these things all work together.
That's a great question.
Maybe it can't be answered. I don't know.
So they were all here when I got here. So I think if you look across longevity, though, all the major themes, whether it's Andrew's work of saying let's take drugs that are already out there and see if we can push basically overall longevity. Whether it's John's thing like, hey, can we grow new neocortical tissue? Whether it's Gloria's, let's see how we can stabilize over time, kind of put things into stasis. I mean, those are the major threads of longevity. And I think all of us realize that we're not going to have a silver bullet. Replacement isn't going to solve everything. Repurposing FDA drugs isn't going to solve everything. Stabilizing isn't going to solve everything. I think the future of really achieving kind of the longevity, reversing aging goals is going to require bets along all these and then understanding how they stitch together, where you want to use one versus the other.
Yeah, I really liked actually that they said they talk to each other all the time.
They do. They're the longevity crew. And we're also hiring. We'd love to have more PMs in this space. It's a huge field. There's so much to get done here. But it's at this really interesting inflection point where I feel like we can push it forward and get a lot more great science being done, great research being done, and products really making it out of the lab into the clinic, touching people. And I know several of you here are working on exactly that.
Yeah, and actually, since you brought that up, I'm going to pull forward a question that I was going to ask you later about, what do you look for in a PM? So if there's a potential PM sitting out here, then maybe they're like, oh, that sounds just like me.
Yes. Well, as I'm sure you saw sitting up here was 3 very different people earlier from DARPA. So they phenotypically show up a little bit different from one another in terms of personality, but they have all the same core things. So one is really technically brilliant, and not just in one area, but really able to be a technical athlete. They can pick up other areas really quickly. Yet at the same time, they all are pretty good at knowing what they don't know. And that's really important for a program manager, which is, yes, you have to be incredibly brilliant, but as a lot of you know, the longer you've been smart and in the field, the longer you realize what you don't know. And so as I always tell them, look, our job is not to have the best ideas. Our job is to find the best ideas. So that's number one. That's why they're always talking to each other. Number two, they have to be skilled at bringing vision to reality and executing. It's really easy to have a big vision. It's very hard. Again, startup lesson. It's very hard to build a team that can go after it, have the milestones and the discipline. And so it's not for everyone. Lots of people have big vision, but being able to execute it is a whole nother thing.
They need to have like organizational skills,
yes,
right?
They do.
Executive function
and
skills.
That varies across PMs. I will definitely say that, and that's why we have teams around them for those that are less skilled in the organization. It is a thing. And then the third thing is they got to have this grit. They want to run through a brick wall. I mean, we have 3-year terms. The PM shows up and the clock is ticking. You know, they're not here to build a bureaucracy. They're not here to build an internal lab. We don't have those. And so it's all on them to make it happen. And that means understanding FDA. That's really, really key, especially in this space, is building those relationships, bringing FDA in early, having conversations with them. They have to be able to be great at, figuring out when something really hard happens. How do you get around it or above it? How do you navigate around that? And especially when you're doing something that's at the edges, half the field is going to tell you you're stupid and that why are you doing this? And I wouldn't do it that way. And I mean, brilliant people are going to tell you this all the time. And so it's being able to both listen to them and continue forward. It's tough. And so those are kind of the 3 core characteristics. You really want a little bit of that kind of entrepreneurial mindset, a little bit. We always like to say a good PM is barely manageable. And I was definitely that person, barely manageable.
I like that. Yeah, you really do have to try to just go through a brick wall, right? I mean, This is really hard stuff you're working on.
Really hard stuff.
And maybe you have to be impatient too.
Always.
Because you want it to happen fast.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to be impatient. And same goes for our performers. Not everyone likes to move the speed that we do. We're not for everyone. I always like to say that. It's great. I think it's one of the most fun things in the world. And our performers who work with us and then end up being performers again think it's the most fun in the world. But it's really not for everyone.
Yeah, you can't rest on your laurels. Don't apply if you don't really want to rest on your laurels. Okay, let's head back to a different question. So this is one I like. You've done so many different things. What's the biggest gap that you see between a technology that works in a lab and one that actually reaches patients? Because, it's crazy how much stuff works in a lab and never gets out.
Yeah, all the time. And, unfortunately, this field also suffers from the same reproducibility crisis that so many other fields do, where the first question is, can even another lab replicate it? Right? And it's because there's all this tacit knowledge and things that you think don't matter or not matter. Being able to really industrialize the science really matters. Another thing is regulatory. Something that works in the lab may have a much harder regulatory path than your understanding because of how it's done. And so you might actually have to think about, what do we need to change about this? How do we need to do this in a way that's actually going to have a more fruitful regulatory path that we go down?
And ARPA-H does that. You're thinking about that all the time.
We try to form those relationships really early, and we've really focused on, since I've been here, really forming tight relationships with all the major center directors and the leadership of FDA, who I have to say have been incredible. Been incredible for us. Really key. So bring them in early and have them inform early. Yeah,
I like that. I mean, even as somebody who does investing in longevity companies, that's something you really have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
What is the regulatory landscape going to look like? Because it might work great, but if you can't get it out there, then it's not going to go anywhere.
If you don't engage the regulators and you show up 4 years later and being like, look what we have, they'll look
it's
at
so
it and be
amazing.
like, that's nice. That's never going to happen. And then we've wasted everyone's time. And I would say the last one is really scalability and cost. Thinking about, look, some of these technologies are going to have to go down the cost curve in order to really impact the number of lives that we want. How do we think about that? And so, Daria is another incredible program manager of ours. She runs Thrive, and we're about to make big announcements around that. It's our cell and gene portfolio. What happened with baby KJ and being able to use genetic therapy to actually cure a child's disease at the genetic level is really incredible. But that was $2 to $3 million.
Yeah.
That's never going to scale.
No.
And there's way more people who need that than we have. And so her whole thought is, how do we think about this technology in a way where We can think about using it as a platform. We can think about bringing it through FDA as a platform and then tuning it later for each patient. How do we think about bringing the cost of manufacturing, whether it's the cellular vesicles, the carrier, how do you reduce the cost or alternatives? All these things we try to think through, which is there's some really exciting things happen, but how do we make sure that they reach the maximum number of people as possible and make it scalable?
Right. I love that. And then once you guys figure some of that stuff out, it can kind of be copied by other people in the private sector.
People would love that.
Right.
That's why we work with the private sector.
Yeah.
Right. We need somebody who cares about that too and wants to take it and run with it.
Dylan, you're looking impatient. Are we reaching I'm not looking at the clock. I'm sorry. I'm having so much fun. Okay. Let's go to questions then.
A fascinating conversation, Sonia. So since you started with Cal, I'm going to jump to him. I'm a neuroscientist, and honestly, I love the vision of how do we transplant a brain. That's really the key to longevity, I think. But the other thing Cal's done recently that I'm another huge fan of as CEO of Parley Neurotech is he pointed out that 70 million Americans can't hear in noisy places, doubles their lifetime risk of dementia. Nothing is available that can help.
Yep.
So I kind of want to square the circle of we actually have a project that's moving much faster than his solution. And I get why he's doing the solution because it's a stepping stone towards the brain transplant. But when we have a solution that's at phase 2, which is where we are, how are we able to become performers if we are now precluded by basis of what the solution contours are?
I mean, have you spoken to Cal?
We have.
That's my first goal. Speak to Cal. Number 2, it sounds like your phase 2 means phase 2 FDA clinical trials.
Correct.
That's usually later than where we fund.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he's actually excited and wishes you all the best. I can't imagine Cal not wishing everyone the best if you know Cal. I mean, this is the tough part, which is sometimes there's aims baked in here where we're trying to show a technology and that it can work in a certain way. And unfortunately, not everyone applies for that or can comply with that is a better way to put it. I wish we could fund everything. The truth of the matter is, we get appropriated roughly about $1.5 billion a year. And unfortunately, we can't fund every great project that comes our way. And that's a really hard part of actually being in the agency is we see so many great things, but they just don't map to what we're doing now. This is a problem at DARPA all the time because everything's so program manager driven. Sometimes people would come in and be like, you guys should really work on this. And we'd be like, we would love to, but we don't have somebody right now. And we're not going to be doing it justice or making sure it gets across the finish line unless we have an owner. And it's so tough to turn things down when that happens.
Is there a particular area that you're looking for a program manager in right now?
Yes.
Can you say?
Yes. Alzheimer's.
Okay.
Alzheimer's, especially Alzheimer's prevention, looking for people who are not religious about it, religious about a certain pathway.
Right.
We think that there's real opportunity there right now and real opportunity for the government to provide some funding there and help work the regulatory path to really move that area forward. There's lots of challenges with it. Longevity, we're continuing to look for someone. Clinical trials, especially thinking about data and AI in clinical trials.
That's a good one.
Digital twins, using very large data sets, figuring out how we can really speed this up and run in silico trials is a major focus for us right now. So we're definitely looking for someone there. If you know people, you probably saw the folks earlier. I was a PM. I mean, people in the end of their career will come here, not early, but also at the end because they realize the ability literally to have this much autonomy, to move at this speed, have the full weight of the agency behind you. And we're not talking a 500K grant. We're literally talking about some of our PMs are managing portfolios of $600 to $700 million of portfolios of funding. That's more than you're ever going to have in a venture fund for many people. It's more money than you're going to have in your own company for many people. And so being able to really put that money to work is just tremendous.
Yeah, that's super exciting. Do we have time for one more? I know, me too. I'm like.
So I looked through the range of projects that are currently, there's nothing about trying to cure menopause. Is that on the horizon at all? Or
if we find, okay, so how am I going to put this? We have some projects running right now. They're not highly publicized.
Right.
So they're small efforts. We would love to hire somebody who wants to come in and drive that. I mean, I would if I wasn't the director of the agency, but you don't want me running it. I have a gajillion other things, unfortunately, that I need to do.
But there's like this small like pieces, fragments of it.
There are, because it's really interesting. There's a lot of interesting science there.
Okay, cool.
All right. Well, thank you. This was so much fun.